morning, everyone. Oh, come on. She warmed you up already. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, that's better. I'm going to spend the next 20-25 minutes with you. And when I was reflecting about the theme, so when Stefania invited me to come here, I was thinking, okay, what does flow mean for you? And I don't know if you've read the description about flow from Mexico, actually, from the chapter in Mexico, but they do talk about a gentleman called Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, who wrote a book and researched about flow. And that was the first thing that came to my mind. But about 2 weeks ago, I went on a weekend with friends, and just boys, by the way. And I told them, oh, look, I'm speaking at that event in a couple of weeks. And they're like, okay, what is it about? And I said, it's about flow. And they're like, are you going to talk about rivers? I don't think so. Are you going to talk about the tide? I'm like, still not. And they said a lot of other inappropriate things that I will not share right now as well. But it made me think, actually, well, what does flow mean for me? Because, yes, I know the concept from someone else, but what does that mean for me exactly? And I looked at the definition in the dictionary, and the basic definition is basically to go from one place to another in a steady stream, which goes very well with the river, by the way, but I'm still not going to talk about rivers. So then I started thinking, well, what does flow really, really mean for me? So what I'd like to do first, actually, is tell you a little bit more about flow based on the concept from Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, and because I think it's a good place to start. And basically what he says is flow is a state. It's a state when you're so much into it that you forget everything that is happening around you. You forget everything, you forget time, and I think the question that we had earlier on about the book is very, very appropriate for this event. When do we actually really lose track of that time? We're so inspired and so into it that we don't see what's happening around. So what he's saying is basically flow is based on two things. The first one is challenge that we have at the top there. And the second one is our skills. And if we have too much skill and we don't have enough challenge, we get into boredom. If we have too much challenge, but we don't have enough skills, that's when we have anxiety. I'm sure you've been through that as well. Oh, I don't know how to do it, but it's really challenging. I'm really stressed about it. Somewhere there at the bottom is probably the worst part of boredom. It's apathy. It's really when you're like, oh my God, this is horrible. Flow is here. Flow is when you have the right level of challenge and the right level of skill. So that's the first thing that he talks about in his book. But for me, there was something that was bothering me a little bit about that, which is the fact that when we talk about the state, there is no concept of movement, which, if you remember the definition from the dictionary, is really going from one place to another in a steady stream. But a state is a state where we are right now, and there is no concept of movement behind it. So again, I went back into, okay, when do I ever go into a state of flow? And for me, there were three things that were very important in that. The first one is presence. When we talk about presence, it's not just being present physically, although our physical is very important. How often do we go into places and we don't realize where we are physically? We might be shaking, we might be stressed, we might be excited. There are lots of things that are happening, but our body is not necessarily there physically. Well, we're there physically, but actually there are lots of things that are happening inside our body that we don't realize. Then there's the mind as well. Last week, someone did an exercise during a training session and said, now we have 1 minute break. What do you think everybody did during that 1 minute? Took their phone out. That's the first thing they did. It took them less than a second to say, I'm going to have a 1 minute break, and instead of stretching a bit, talking to the person next to you, I'm going to pick up my phone. That's what our mind does. So then being present with your mind is another very important part. Then there's the heart as well. We have all these emotions. How often do we recognize, do we name those emotions? And then the last thing for me that's part of the presence is our intuition, our gut feeling. How often do we listen to that? How often are we so present that we actually listen to that gut feeling that we have. So I'm going to do a small exercise with you just to show you actually how important it is to be present and what's the impact on your body. And I have a lovely assistant here at the front who doesn't know what's going to happen. Thank you, Dragos. You can press start. How good are you at singing, by the way?
Singing?
Yeah. Horrible. So if I put you on stage to sing now, can we do that? Or dancing otherwise? Dancing would work as well?
Not maybe.
No? Dancing is not a good thing either. Crap. Maybe some questions about, like personal questions about your childhood or what you're doing? Yeah? Can do things like that as well? No? Okay, I'm going to stop torturing you. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask everyone to join us in this exercise as well. What I'd like you to do is the first thing, and we're going to do it in a very simple way. I'd like you to focus on your heart. And I'd like you to imagine that you're breathing from your heart. You're breathing in and you're breathing out. If it can help you, use the thing that you have here. When it goes up, when it goes down, breathe in. When it goes up, breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in and out. Okay, let's stop here because we're not going to spend the morning doing that. We can stop actually. What I'd like to show you is that most of our life we spend it like this. This is what happens. That's your heart rate variability. Well, it's Jago's heart rate variability, but it works the same for you as well. When things are happening, when our brain is switched on all the time with our phone, with the things around, that's what happens to our heart on the left-hand side. When we start focusing on ourselves, this is what happens. You can clearly see the difference. So I don't want to push you into breathing. This is not the point. What I'd like you to understand is how important it is to be present. What is even more important is to find what is the way for you to find your own presence. How do you actually anchor yourself and find that coherence in yourself so your body can actually be there, your mind can be there, you can start recognizing the emotions you have, and you can start trusting your gut feeling. So that's the first thing for me when it comes to being in flow. We need to be present. If we're not here in that moment, we're not going to enjoy it. Because what happens here is we can move into true happiness. Every day we enjoy things. I'm sure all of you have done one of these online games, for example, or video games. Do you enjoy it? Yeah, probably. But that's enjoyment. Is it true happiness? No, it's not, because you're not fully present. You're not fully there. So that's point number one. That's the first thing for me that is very important, is presence. The second point is purpose. Purpose is the why. Why are we doing what we're doing? Why is it so important? And the image here for me is, imagine you're driving a car, but you're driving a car without a destination and without a map. What's going to happen? You might end up going into the wrong direction and be completely lost. You might run out of fuel because you don't know where the next gas station is. And then you're going to be stuck on the side of the highway. Purpose is basically what would slightly and gently guide us through life. Yes, in our car we will still switch lane. We might take alternative routes. We might even stop to refuel sometimes. And we might even actually change the end destination at some point as well. Who knows? It doesn't matter. That purpose might change. That goal might change on the way. But by having a purpose, we have a rough idea of where we're going. And when we talk about purpose, there are three things that are very important. The first one is passion. And on your labels that you've all picked up at the entrance, there is one question, which is, what are you passionate about? And you've all written something, it's great, but the next step is about, how do I explore that? What does that really mean? I'll give you an example. Obviously, the profession I do as a coach is one of my passions. I love it. But actually, what's really behind that? Well, I love to care about people. I love to create new connections. Recently, I decided to build the beds from scratch for my daughters. Well, that's another passion for me. That was really interesting for me to do it. What's really behind that? Well, I'm going to do something that is going to help my daughters. I'm going to use my creativity maybe out of it as well and think how I'm going to design it. So behind that passion is thinking what are these things really deep that enable you to actually create your purpose. So that's the first thing. The second thing, so that's what you love doing. The second thing is your skills. It's what you're good at. That's probably easier to think about it sometimes, not always, but that's what's going to be the next element for you to be able to decide, okay, how am I going to actually really, really connect with my purpose? So skills would be those things that you're really good at, the things that come easy to you. And then the last part, in defining your purpose, are the opportunities. Another way to think about it is, what does the world out there need? And that world out there doesn't mean the entire world. For some of us, it's going to be just our children, our friends, our family, people that are close to us, our co-workers. Because that element here, the opportunities, enables you to say, okay, I'm having an impact on something, on someone. And by having these three elements, you can start defining what's your purpose. So we have the presence, we have the purpose, and the last one for me is push, because we always need a little bit of a push. And I have a story for that. Actually, it always starts with a story. It's a very common story that we hear in the coaching world as well. So here goes the story. It's a king, like a very rich king in a kingdom far away, and he wants to find the bravest man in the kingdom. So what he decides to do is he builds a huge pool, and in there he throws sharks, crocodiles, piranhas, and he goes like, he calls all his subjects from the kingdom, gathers them, and says, okay, the person who is going to be able to swim from one end of the swimming pool to the other end of the swimming pool is going to be the bravest man in the kingdom. And as a reward, he can choose between a gigantic amount of gold, or he can marry my daughter and become the next king. All the subjects are looking at each other going like, this man is crazy. I mean, no one is going to go in there. And then suddenly, in the swimming pool, there's a guy who is swimming as fast as he can, trying to get out on the other side of the swimming pool. And he comes out, he's like panting, he's breathing really hard. And the king is like, congratulations, you're the bravest man in the kingdom. What would you like? Do you want gold? Do you want to marry my daughter? The guy is still breathing, he's struggling to catch his breath. And the king insists, and the guy says, no, I don't want any of that. And the king says, what do you mean you don't want to marry my daughter? You don't want gold? What do you want? I want to know who's the fucker who pushed me in that pool. The moral of the story is sometimes we do need a little bit of a push to be courageous and brave. That's very important. Because behind that push is how we create that energy that enables us to actually move forward. And when we talk about energy, here we're talking about three things. The first one is, what are those strengths that we can use to be able to move forward? But not any kind of strength, those strengths that energize us. Because if we think about our weaknesses, and we always think about, I need to get better at something. But if we're not good at it and we don't enjoy it, then we're going to go nowhere. So there's no point in thinking about those. Let's just leave them on the side. Let's focus on the strengths that are very, very important to us and that will give us the energy. That's the first thing. The second thing is to visualize where we want to go. Think about, what does it look like when I get there? And most importantly, how am I going to feel when I achieve that? When I'm going to build my daughter's bed and I'm going to open the door and my daughters are going to see their bed for the first time, how am I going to feel when that's happening? And that's the second thing. And then the third thing, I forgot it, of course. So I talked about, there's always a moment when you forget something, obviously. So the first thing is about finding your strength. The second thing is about visualizing it and thinking about the feelings. And the third thing, I forgot about it. It doesn't matter. It will come back. But the most important point here is creating that energy. Think about it as a volcano. You're building up there in the ground all these things that are important to you so you can actually give yourself that energy. So just to wrap up, when it comes to flow and when it comes to myself, for me there are three things I need to think about. How do I get present? How do I make sure that I'm here in the moment? How do I find my purpose? And how do I give myself a push? Thank you.